We're in Matthew 6, verse 1. These are the words of Jesus. Beware of practicing, circle practicing, your righteousness, circle, underline righteousness, before other people, and here's the whole context, underline this phrase, in order to be seen by them. For then, if you do that, you will have no reward from your Father who is in heaven. Thus, when you give, circle when you give, to the needy, sound no trumpet before you, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues, circle hypocrites, and in the streets, that they may be praised by others. Truly I say to you, they've received their reward. But when you give, circle when you give, to the needy, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. So that, why would I do that? So that your giving may be in secret. Circle secret. And underline this last sentence. And your Father, God, who sees in secret, will reward you. Ready? I'm going to walk into your heart today through what Jesus is speaking about. And I'm going to try to reorient the way you view how you navigate your life. So we're going to walk into your heart and we're going to talk about your life of generosity, of how you view your life in this world. Let me ask this question, or answer this question in your own mind. If I was to take you to court and somebody accused you of being generous, would there be evidence for it? Is there enough evidence in your life if somebody took you to court and go, I accuse you of being generous? Would there be evidence for or against that? So for many of us, we'd go, well, you could look at my Venmo account, you could look at my, how I use my debit card or whatever, and you could try to look and see what the financial side is, but I'm asking this of you. Not just to look at the financial side, but to look at your whole life. Are you living generously with who you are as a person, not just what you do with your finances? Because ready, here we go. Your finances are just an extension of who you are. You spend your money on what's important to you. And so that importance thing dwells here. It doesn't dwell in your wallet or in your purse or in your Venmo account. It dwells here in my heart. Because I give as I see fit in my heart. So if I'm generous in my heart, I'll be generous with my life. Here we go. If you got your notes, pull them out. They should be inside your bulletin if you came on campus. So if you have the bulletin that was at the door or was given to you, the bulletin is right there, or the notes are right there. If you're online with us, welcome. I saw people when I was sitting at my desk from all over the world, so I'm so glad you're here. If you're online with us on YouTube or on Facebook, at the top of the comment section, you'll see a link. Click on that link and my notes will come up. Number one is this. Here's how to deal with your generosity according to Jesus. Number one, believers are to practice the right action. Believers are to practice the right action. Where do I get that from? Look at chapter 6, verse 1. Beware of practicing your righteousness. So it's interesting that Jesus doesn't say this. Hey, whenever you get around to feeling like it, or whenever you think the church is doing something, or, blah, 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 then whenever your heart is like stirred to give, do it. Nope. It's not supposed to be a haphazard thing of giving to God. It's supposed to be a practice. So the Greek word that's talking about practice there literally means to do continually. So I'm a coach in this valley. I'm a football coach. I coach quarterbacks and receivers. And so if you've ever done quarterbacking at any level, you know that is a highly stressful position because large men are trying to hurt you at a very high rate of speed. And so large men are coming to hurt you, and you have a very short amount of time to make a decision to get rid of the ball before your head gets smashed. So I work with the quarterbacks to go, here's what we practice over and over. Here's how you do your footwork. Here's how you stand. Here's what you're scanning. Here's how you read the defense. And you're going to throw and try to get rid of the ball before large men hurt you. So watch. It's highly stressful. So in stressful situations, your mind goes, and you start to lose, like, what should I be doing? You start to panic. Unless you have practiced it over and over and over and over. So when stress comes, boom, not a problem because I've done this a million times. So stress doesn't bother me because I practice and practice and practice. So that same word is the same word that Jesus uses for practicing your righteousness. In other words, there are things that should be a continual part of your life because you practice them all the time. And generosity is one of those things. But it's something that's very foreign to our culture. So here it is, number one. In the Old Testament, so Old Testament is about the front 2/3 of your Bible. It's where God gave the law and all the outworkings of that law to Israel. In the front 2/3 of your Bible, that's the Old Testament. In the Old Testament, Israel, the nation of Israel, was a theocracy. What does a theocracy mean? It means it's a nation ruled by God, but run by men. So let me help you understand this. Everybody look at me. Ready? You do not live in a pure democracy. So you sat through your sociology class or whatever, your government class. We are not a pure democracy. A pure democracy would mean this. Every time there's something to vote on, should we give cheese to this rodent? Hundreds of millions of us Americans would go, yes, no, tally up the votes. Nobody has time for that. You'd spend your whole life voting. So what do we do in America? We are not a pure democracy. We are actually a representative republic, which means this. I vote on who's going to represent me to go vote for me, which is why you should be very careful about who you vote for to be your representative behind closed doors, because they're making decisions for you that you have no idea about. So watch, we don't vote on everything. I vote on a person and send them to Washington, D.C. to vote for me. That's called a representative republic, okay? So watch, we're not a pure democracy, and we're not a theocracy, which means God doesn't rule America. Our Constitution does. It's written by men, and men try to do the outworkings of the Constitution. Israel was not so. Israel was given the law by God, written down by Moses, but it was given by God. So Israel is ruled by God, but the rules are enforced by men. That's a theocracy. God rules it. In the law, they were commanded, all the Israelites were commanded to give a tithe, which is just another word meaning 10%, of all their assets to God for the running of the country and the support of the priests. And that turned out to be about 30% of their income. So look at this. How many of you guys love getting taxed in California? Isn't it awesome? We are one of the most taxed people in the nation. And it's awesome because I know that my governor, I'm sure, is spending my tax money in the wisest way possible. So wherever my governor is today, I'm sure he's using all of the hundreds of millions of dollars to fill the potholes and take care of all the things that are important to me in California, right? So we give of our taxes to hopefully make our lives better. We hope our government does the best by us, by the tax money we give. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Also true in Israel, but this might surprise you. God commanded the people to not just give 10%, but it was 10% of everything, which ended up being about 30% of their income to fund the military, to keep the nation working. It's what our tax money does. It keeps our nation functioning, as much as we don't like to pay taxes. But the nation of Israel had to do that as well. God's people were to recognize God's provision and not show up to worship him empty-handed. Look at this. Look at Deuteronomy 8:18. Deuteronomy 8:18. So this is in the Old Testament, and God says this, "You shall remember the Lord your God." Look at it. Why do you think God had to tell his people, don't forget me? You want to know why? Because after a while, you start to think, this money's mine. Who made this money? I did. Who went to work? Me. Who's the check written to? Me. After a while, you start to think, life's kind of all about me, which is weird that God would have to tell his own people. You know what happens after a while? You start to be like self-sufficient. Look what he says. You shall remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you the power to get what? Wealth, that he may confirm his covenant that he swore to your fathers, as it is to this day. So understand, ready? I'm going to help you. You don't earn wealth. You didn't make money. God allows you to have money. You are not the maker of wealth. God allows you to make your finances. Let me help you with this. Many of us work the stock market, or we work bonds, or we, do shorts and stuff and try to make money. And we have the intellect to be able to pull that off. Understand, God is the one who gave you that intellect to make that money. So there are people smarter than you on the other side of the world that'll never get to work our stock market, that are more intelligent than you, that will never make a dime you make. And for many of us that work like, man, I worked like 60 hours last week. I worked overtime, and when that pay comes, man, it's nice to get that check. Understand this, ready? There are many people who worked harder than you last week, or for these last 2 weeks, that live on the other side of the world, that worked harder than you, and they will make zero money because they live in an economy where they're literally living off the dirt, and they have dirt floors in their house. So my point is this: it's not about, wow, I worked really hard, I deserve this money. Wow, I'm super intelligent, man, I made this cash. What it's about is this: God allowed you to make that money, regardless of how hard you worked, regardless of how intelligent you are. It's a gift of God. The wealth is not from you, the wealth comes from God. So just be clear, I'm going to reorient your whole life. Everything you have is a gift from God. God has been so extremely generous to you that he hasn't been to some other people on the other side of the world. And it should fire inside of you just appreciation for God. That God has allowed you to manage wealth. Look at Deuteronomy 16 and 17. Same book, a few chapters later. Look what God says when you come to worship God. 3 times a year, all your males shall appear before the Lord your God at the place that he will choose, at the Feast of Unleavened Bread, the Feast of Weeks, and the Feast of Booths. They shall not appear before the Lord empty-handed. Wow. Every man shall give as he is able, according to the blessing of the Lord your God has given you. Think about this. What if I was to tell you this? Hey, think about last year. Think about, let's just say you went to church every year last year. You went to church 52 times last year. I did. Let's just say you showed up here 52 times last year. And you came to church, man, you got to sing to God in a beautiful place, with beautiful music, with beautiful people. It was awesome. But what if I was to tell you this? What if I was to tell you that if you didn't give to God, you didn't worship God that Sunday? That I showed up empty-handed to God? What if I deleted all the Sundays from last year that you didn't give at all? How many Sundays would you have worshiped God? For some of us, we didn't give anything to God the whole year. Like literally all of our Sundays would have been 0. What's interesting is God says to the men, hey, I need all the men to show up before me. And when you come to worship me, you better not come empty-handed. Because I blessed you this whole last year. You know where you got your wealth from? You know where you got your animals from? You know where you got that you sold all those animals and made that cash and that bundle that you got sitting somewhere? You know where that came from? It came from me. I don't need your money, but I want you to know that you should not be ruled by your cash. God doesn't need our money. He's given us our money. God doesn't need Jack. He doesn't need me, you. He needs no one. But you know what he needs? He needs your heart. Now, I'm going to give you a hard truth about your finances. Ready? Your heart strings are tied to your wallet. They're tied to your Venmo account. They're tied to your purse. What do I mean by that? I mean this. Who you really are, your high values come right out of your heart. And you spend your money on the things that are of high values to you. Here's the point. Have you ever given or been generous to the things of God? Have you ever given to other people or the work of God with the money God's given you? Have you ever done that? For many of us, it's like, no, I've never given $1. For many of us, we're super generous. But wherever you find yourself, understand this, ready? God expects a heart of generosity out of you. You should be practicing that all the time. That's what he said. Hey, you should be practicing the right things of God. This is how crazy it is. Some of you guys, on your way to church, stopped at Starbucks and got a $63 Stanley cup and filled it with $12 coffee that Starbucks spent 38 cents brewing. So you walked out of there after taxes with about a $70 cup of coffee, and you come to church going, I don't really think I can give. What are you talking about? And that's like literally like your third Stanley mug, because you didn't like the other colors. It's like literally 200 feet away from our church. You just burned $70. And you come in here and go, no, church just all cares about money. I couldn't care less about money. I care about where your heart's at. You're the one that cares about money because you're getting offended that you can't go spend $70 on a mug. You know, the sad reality is we're more generous to ourselves than we are to the things of God. That's just the fact. Giving to God really doesn't benefit me, but this mug sure will, in the 4th color for this week. I got in a fist fight at Target with a lady because the mugs just came out. Give me a stinking break. You're going to we give you a free mug. You're going to get in a fist fight with Karen at Target? Hey, think of what I'm saying. Stop the craziness. Stop the insanity of your mind going, I just really don't have the money for that. That's ridiculous. Generosity is a key of God. If God's been so good to you that you can afford a $60 mug, you better check where your heart's at. Because if it offends you to think about giving to God, I don't care if you make minimum wage. I don't care. I don't care if you make minimum wage. Some of us in here make millions of dollars a year. Some of us make thousands of dollars a month, or $1,000 a month, or whatever. It doesn't matter the amount. It matters where your heart's at. Are you a generous person, or are you like everything has to be through me? It's always about generosity because you own nothing. It all belongs to God. And that's a different way of looking at your stuff. Here it is. Here's our first principle. God doesn't need our finances, but shows us who we are in how we manage them. Woo, look at it with your eyes. Does God need your money? Nothing. You need zero. He gave it to you. But why does God ask us to give? Because it shows us who we are, our heartstrings, by how we manage our money. Additionally, God expected godly people to help the destitute, like elderly widows and child orphans who couldn't care for themselves. So let me help you with this. Does God expect giving back to God's people, like our family? Yep. We are one of the most generous churches. We are the most generous church I've ever even heard of or been a part of. So you might not realize this if you don't give here, but we literally fill our food pantry twice a year. We gave 7,000 pounds, that's tons of food, to fill our food pantry. And if you've ever been, like some of us have been like in tough financial straits, or like, yeah, I don't know how we're going to eat this month. But we can go to our local food pantry and get a little basket of food or like canned food or whatever. We are the ones as a church who fill that thing. We just did it like during Thanksgiving. And then we sent out 500 boxes to children who didn't get anything for Christmas. To the other side of the world, people you'll never meet or see, we sent them presents. We took care of the incarcerated, people who have mom and dads in jail, kids, and those of us that had kids that had mom and dad that were incarcerated or whatever, we know there's no money for presents because nobody's making money in prison for the family. We took care of their kids. We bought them Christmas presents for incarcerated parents that couldn't buy for their own kids. Our church did that. We are one of the most giving, open, loving, generous churches I've ever seen in my life. And if you haven't got on board with that, man, this is what I'm talking about. Like, man, we do good work in the world because it's not about us. It's about Jesus. It's about making him famous in our valley and around the world. And here's our principle. The heart of God for others is often displayed through the hands of others. The heart of God is often displayed through the hands of others. So there's going to be people in your life who don't love God, who are atheists, who go, I hate God, or I don't even believe God exists. But when tough times come, if you're a generous person, you're going to be amazed how God just softens their heart because they realize you didn't have to do that for me. But man, you were generous to me in my time of need. And I think God might exist because that's so unnatural. I see God in you, and I don't know how else to explain it. So sometimes the heart of God is shown through the hands of people. And in Jesus' day, ready? He expected men to show up and give to the things of God. Men, you control the majority of the finances in your home, especially if you have a wife that stays home with the kids or whatever. Like the majority of your life is just making money to try to keep the home afloat. So that's why God expects, especially men, goes for both men and women, whoever makes money, but especially men, because men tend to be the more focused ones on like, I'm going to get a career, I'm going to make this money, I'm going to buy this boat, we're going to get this house, I'm going to move up the corporate ladder, whatever, I'm going to make this business, whatever it is. Men just tend to be more focused like that. One of the faults, which is awesome, but one of the faults of that is this: I did it, it's mine. Rather than realize, oh, time out, son. You did hard work, which thumbs up for you, keep doing hard work, but let's make sure you realize where all that came from is God. Let's get your head right. Here's the thing. Do we give to the things of God? Yep. Also, we should be giving to the really hurting in our culture. What would have been 2,000 years ago when Jesus talks about the destitute? It would have been elderly women. So in Jesus' day, there's not a middle class. There's basically the rich elite and those that are just basically eking out a living out of the ground, which is the vast majority of Jews in the first century. But here's what happens. You have an elderly mother. You're a young man or whatever, you die, and mom is left by herself. She's 60, 70, 80 years old. In that culture, how's she going to make money? She can't start an Etsy and sell her crafts online from the comfort of her home. You know what she has to do? She has to go try to dig a hole or plant some seeds or go work in the field. How's an elderly lady going to be able to support herself? She can't. Her body can't do it anymore. So who's going to take care of her, son? All the males in her family are dead or gone. Who's going to take care of grandma? She's going to die, is what's going to happen. There's no Social Security. Government's not coming. Nobody's coming. So Jesus says this, and God said that in the Old Testament. Men who have the finances, the wealth from God to be able to support themselves and their family should be helping other people. Helping a woman that can't do anything for them, you help them. Giving them food. Providing shelter of some sort. Same thing on the other spectrum. So now you've got orphans. So there's no CPS, there's no nothing in the first century. There's a baby born from a prostitute or a baby that's a kid that's not wanted, or maybe their parents die of a disease, or dad goes off to war and dies and mom abandons a kid. Whatever the situation is, you've got a 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old running the streets, picking through trash out of a dump, starving on the street. But hey, my family's doing good. We're living large. We bought our clothes from Ross, kid. Bam. And God goes, hey, what about that? What about that kid? That's not that kid's fault. I blessed you with all this stuff. You gonna let that kid die? Nope, I'm gonna help. Yep. So the wealth from God blesses me and my family, but it shouldn't just stop here. It should flow from me to other people as well. Those that can't work. I can't expect an 8-year-old to go farm. How's that kid gonna eat? I got to feed him. I go buy him food. That's a heart of generosity, looking out for other people and how you can be a blessing to others. Christians and Christian organizations are the most giving and generous people on earth. They sacrifice to help the destitute through hospitals and relief organizations more than anyone. So hey, don't get it twisted. Look in my eyes. You know who the most generous people on earth are? And this is a fact. This isn't made up. Christians. You know who gives the most to other organizations that help in the world? Christians do. You know who builds those hospitals in the name of a Christian person or Jesus himself in the Sudan or whatever, and puts up those tents so they don't get bit by mosquitoes? The vast majority of those are Christians. When's the last time the Atheist Club of America put up a hospital and helped somebody else out? Oh, that's right. You can't think of one because they don't. But you know who does? Is the people that love Jesus. Christians are the most helpful people in the world. It's not even close. Not Muslims, not Buddhists, not anybody. Because of this reason right here. Christians are generous to help other people that they'll never meet. What you might be surprised by is that our church is part of the Southern Baptists, and the Southern Baptists are one of the most connected organizations to disasters on the other side of the world. They'll literally sometimes beat the UN and beat the Red Cross there. And you know who supports them? We do. You don't even realize this. Some of the money you give that I'm talking about this morning goes to that organization. We give them money from the money that we all of us have given to the work of God here. So they go because we can't. So you're actually supporting the work of God on the other side of the world and you didn't even know you were. Like that's the generosity and the help that Jesus is talking about here. When you practice righteousness, man, it's like it has to be a part of who you are, not just something you do because you feel bad or you feel guilty or like, I got a little bit of money this month. No, it's something you do continually, whether it's a little or a lot. Why? Because that's who I am. I'm a generous person, so I give generously to whatever. A person in need, my family, my church family, whatever it is. Which leads us to number 2. Believers are to possess the right motivation. Number 1, believers are to practice the right action, be generous. But number 2, believers are to possess the right motivation. Jesus' concern wasn't if people gave, but why they gave. In his day, religious leaders would make a big performance out of their giving to display their piety and godliness. Instead of using God's gift to honor God and help others, they used God's gift to honor themselves. While God owns everything and can do all the work himself, he doesn't need us or our money. He blesses those who are a blessing to others with a right heart. Here's our principle. Believers don't give from their bank, they give from their heart. Hey, look at me. Don't tap out. I know it's 12:30. Eat a Red Bull. Punch yourself in the face. Wake back up. Ready? Hey, listen, I'm talking about reorienting your whole life in the way, because it's the way you spend your money. Your heart is tied to your money. So what you do with your money are your high values. I'm asking you, are you generous with what your high values are? Are you Jesus-oriented or me-oriented? Let me give you an example. Ready? I'm going to speak to the men again. This applies to both men and women, whoever makes money, but especially men because they tend to be driven this way. You're 18 years old. Look at this. Let's say your work life is from 18 to 65-ish. Okay? You have about 35-ish years, depending on how your health is, to make money. Usually when you start out in your teens or your 20s, you're making on the bottom end of the scale. By the time you get to your 30s, 40s, 50s, maybe you're making a lot of money. Maybe you've invested well. Maybe you worked really hard. Maybe your business just killing it. Okay? You have a certain segment of time to manage your money. If you have a generous heart, all the way through your life, you should be giving to the work of God. As God has given to you, you give out to other people. Do you use the money that God gives you to bless yourself? Sure. Do you bless your family? Of course. Take care of the people close to you, but it shouldn't just end with you. Here's the thing. What we do oftentimes is our culture has taught us, just be about yourself. Spend your money on yourself. Just make yourself happy. And instead of us being a conduit of God's blessing, so a conduit is like a pipe like in plumbing, which runs maybe from an upper story to a lower story, and it has like a curve or an elbow in it, and it flows from one to the next. God's idea is this. He blesses us with finances. It flows from God to us, but instead of it flowing to us and through us to other people, we put a nice little plug in it. I just want it to go shtunk, and I want it to sit right here. So guess what? What God wants is to and through. Does it bless me as it passes through? Yep, but it should go to other people too. And while you live in the age range where you control your finances, do the work of God. Because here's the reality. There's going to come a day when you are 60, 70, 80 years old, you will no longer control your finances. There'll be a day you die. And the lawyer who you wrote your will with is going to dole out whatever finances you made to your kids or whoever. And you know what your kids are going to do? They're going to buy a Ferrari and crash it on TikTok for views. Ready? Here's my ask of you in God's will. While you control your finances, do something with it so you can see what God can do with it. Why wait till you're dead and have other people that don't have your same values control your wealth? Do something with your wealth while you can see it with your eyes. When you can see God do something amazing. When you can see people be blessed by your finances. Why not do that while you can see it? Sell that stock. Do that thing. Do the thing God puts on your heart so that, wow, look at the work of God is getting done. Rather than going, I don't know, I'm just going to kind of just pile it all up until I'm done, and then we're just going to divvy it out to the kids. Nothing wrong with having an inheritance for your kids. But the point is this. Why wait till you're dead and you don't get to see what God can do with your finances? Live a generous life. As God has blessed you, bless others. When you come to worship God, bring something to God. Not because he needs it, because I need to give it. Because it shows me that I don't worship my finances. I worship the God who gave me finances. And the God who lets you manage a little will let you manage a lot if you're faithful. I know this doesn't apply to anybody in here, but sometimes kids can be a nightmare. I'm not saying it applies to anybody at the Orchard. I'm just saying if you ever hear of parents having tough kids, this will apply to them. Imagine you're a parent. You have a kid. You give them everything. They're running around with a $1,000 phone, and they're still complaining. This really isn't the color I wanted. You give them a car when they're 16. And they're like, it's not really the model I wanted. You give them clothes. Sally has better stuff than I do. I mean, after a while, your parents are like, oh, really? I've given you everything. You live better than 99.9% of the children that ever hit the face of the earth, and you're still complaining. I know no one has children like that. I'm just saying if you hear of it, this might apply. Ready? Now imagine you have a 10-year-old daughter, and you've been teaching her how to manage her finances. And you say, here's your list of things you have to get done for the family. Take the trash out, pick up the dog poop, blah, put your clothes away, blah, blah, whatever it is. I'm going to give you $10 a month. $10? Wow. And your daughter gets that cash, that cold, hard cash. At the end of the month, I just made $10. And imagine she does this. That's a lot of money. I don't need all of this. Who can I give some of this to bless them? Imagine if your daughter did that. You'd be like, okay, what else do you want? Pull the cash out. You want 100? You want 1,000? You want 10,000? You want to know why? Because all of a sudden you get a peek into your daughter's heart. And you go, wow, my daughter's trustworthy with money. She knows how to manage finances. If you're good with $100, you'll be good with 1,000. You're good with 1,000, you're good with 10,000. You're good with 10,000, you're good with 10 million. It doesn't matter because your heart's right. You're always going to make the right decision. Should money bless you? Of course. Let it bless you. Let your hard work bless you. But the point is, it shouldn't just bless you. It should flow to and through. Because he who is faithful with a little will be faithful with a lot. And you know what's sadly, for some of us, the plug has been we're unwilling to give to God. And God would have given us much more finances to manage by now, but we're stuck. We're stuck with a little bit because we haven't shown ourselves faithful. So always trust God is the point. Can God give you millions to manage? Yeah, but why would he give you millions when you're not even managing thousands? Because he knows you're just going to burn those millions on some cyber trucks. At least donate one to your pastor. Here we go. I'm going to close with this. In the Old Testament, free will offerings were above and beyond what was required to build and bless others. Kingdom citizens, me and you, Christians, people that love God, recognize the grace of God has been given to them. The greater the grace that we recognize from God, the greater the generosity is required. And here's our principle. Grace produces gratitude, and gratitude produces generosity. Hey, look in my eyes. I deserve to go to hell. Not because God hates me, but because I can't fix the brokenness in my relationship with God myself. God is perfect. I will never be perfect. There's a massive eternal void between a perfect God and imperfect, sinful me, broken me. How can I fix that? I can't. There's not enough doors I can knock on, enough pamphlets to hand out, enough money to give to the church. I can't make up for my sin with God. I need grace. I need somebody to help me. Who's going to keep me out of hell? Not me. You know what's amazing about the biblical story is that Jesus is the one who saves me. I don't deserve grace. I deserve punishment because I've rebelled against God. And I know I've done things God hates. But God forgives me through Jesus. Ready? When you recognize the grace you've been given, it produces gratitude. If you don't recognize grace, you're like all about self. You live close-fisted. Instead of living open-handed, letting things pass through your hand, it blesses you for a moment, but it goes on to someone else. You close-fisted. I need to hang on to everything, every dime, every penny, and it's all mine. But man, you haven't realized the grace you've been given. Grace produces gratitude. Thank you, God, that I'm saved. I deserve nothing. You've given me everything. And gratitude produces generosity. God, I want to live open-handed. Not because you need my stuff, but I need to give it because it shows that I'm not ruled by my stuff. I'm ruled by my Savior. God uses our finances, me and yours, to build his kingdom. Kingdom citizens, me and you, forge God's kingdom with our time, our talent, and our treasure. The attitude of kingdom giving is not what is required, but rather whatever is required, God. Whatever you need from me, I'll give. Because I know you can always give me more, but even if you don't, I'm in it to win it with you. So look at me, and I'm done. Reconnect. Ready? If somebody was to ask you, what did Pastor Jim talk about today? It isn't. They asked some stuff about money. You know what it is? I couldn't care less about your money. You know what I care about? I want all of you. I want everything you are. I want your whole self. I couldn't care less about your money. I want all of who you are. I want your time, your talent, and your treasure, because that's what God requires. All of us are a family. All of us are on mission for God if you're a Christian. And God uses us to do great things in the world. That has to be all of who you are, not just a section of who you are. We live lives of gratitude and a desire for God to get glory. And when God gets glory, we feel joy. So we serve God, and God returns to us just feelings of gratitude for what we've been generous with because of his great generosity to us. God expects Christians to have a paradigm shift from serve us to service. Look at that. I thought that was pretty good when I wrote it, so just at least appreciate it right now. At least look at it. Ready? God expects Christians to have a paradigm shift from, hey, serve me. Hey, where's my stuff? Hey, it's all about me. We live in a Yelp culture. Oh my gosh. Christians see God as owners and themselves as managers. You can't outgive God. God gives us wealth not to raise our standard of living, but our standard of giving. We give all to the God who gave us everything. Hey, guess what, friends? Look at my eyes. You are loved by God. You are blessed by God. God wants to do great things through you. Look at me. Tell him. One of the things that will hinder you is your love for yourself. And one of the reflections of love for self is, I spend all of my money on me, and I have no generosity. And what you don't want is God to close off the valve of blessing to your life because you're not managing what he's already given you well. We live with a heart of generosity. So if that isn't you yet, maybe today's your first step. Let this year be a heart of generosity for you, whether you're minimum wage or maximum wage. Doesn't matter. Be generous, and you'll be amazed how God blesses your life.